of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority in the Philippines. He's part of the Policy, Research and Legal Service, and he will speak to us about Orientalism in the Philippines.
Thank you, Peter. And I do apologize if I'm wearing a face mask because for medical purposes, I have a wound in my lip and it has bleeding on it. So I don't want to distract you while I'm speaking and looking at my lip appearance. It's distracting the way that I'm relaying the message and talk that I'm going to do right now. Now, the talk that I'm going to relay to this session is Orientalism in the Philippines. Decades ago, this was the focus of my study. I actually abandoned it because even for Orientalists in the West, they don't want to be called as Orientalists because of the pejorative notion attached to this nomenclature term, Orientalist or Orientalism. Rather, some people would like to be called area studies specialists, Islamic studies specialists, among others. Now, there is actually a one big room elephant that we wanted to pursue because when we wanted to look at Orientalism as a framing and as a concept and how it will be utilized, suitable, and applicable to our daily lives as human beings, and that's not actually the Orientalism that I'm talking about, but actually the coloniality of being and coloniality of power that has pervading effect all throughout societies in the entire world, especially in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines. The way we dress, the way we perceive people, the way we talk, the way when we were educated, when we were in our grade school until we earn our PhD, coloniality of being in our minds and coloniality of power is so entrenched and embedded within ourselves, in our normative lived realities of life, especially in the Philippines. So the Orientalist framing in the Philippines is quite embedded and attached with the color of coloniality because of its colonization, colonial experience for the past 300 years by Spain, by America, and Japan, and of those institutions that were copycat, that was emulated from the U.S. Political system, educational system, even in lawmaking and legal system of the Philippines are highly colonized. Now, there is actually kind of a similarity between the Palestinian experiences and our experiences as the Muslims, the minority Muslims, Muslim minorities in the Philippines. Back at the time, 100 years ago, Mindanao, an island, probably similar to Palestine, has many people living there. Majority of them are Muslims in Mindanao. But as time goes by, because of the coloniality of power embedded in the northern part of the country, holding the power, holding the government resources, had tried to interfere and intervene to the socio-political life of Muslims in the southern part of the Philippines. They are now actually marginalized. Now in 2025, the Bangsamoro people, which is, it constitutes 13 ethnolinguistic Muslim communities in the Philippines. Before, it has the 100 percentage of the territorial jurisdiction of the southern part. Now it only constitutes for about 5 to 10% of its territorial jurisdiction, similar to what happened to Palestine. But the good thing there is that way back in 1978, they had this Tripoli agreement between the Moro National Liberation Front, those who fought against and wanted to really foresee self-determination. They wanted to have their own autonomous governance. Had a 1996 final agreement with the Christian-dominated national government of the Philippines. But it went successful during that time. So way back in 2019, this was the first Bangsamoro autonomous regional government that was established due to the peace process negotiation. So the nuance and the different thing between the Palestinian case and the Bangsamoro case is that the peace negotiation was successful. The Philippine government, which is predominantly Christians, had a peace agreement with the Muslim minorities in the southern part of the Philippines. to establish the first ever Bangsamoro Autonomous Regional Government in 2019. So it's a very, very new parliament. So I'm part of that institution, of part of that regional government. We just went to Atchet to look at and somehow look at the political processes of Indonesian government, how the Achenese government are being represented in the Indonesian National Congress. So we take a look at that autonomous power that was given by the national government to the Muslim minorities in the Philippines. And the way that the Muslim minorities wanted to pursue a trajectory of their own destination, their own political, social, economic trajectories of their lives, is to somehow to counter the highly secular, the highly colonial government. Can you imagine the Senate system, the upper chamber of the Congress of the Philippines is a copycat of the US system, but they forget one thing. The Senate representation in the US is represented based on the number of states. So per state in the US, it has 2 senators. But in the Philippines, the Senate representation is nationwide. So that's what you get, that those who are being elected to sit in the Senate chamber are only those coming from the capital. There are no representations coming from the southern part of the Philippines, northern part of the Philippines, but only in the metropolitan city that has a sitting majority representation in the Congress. So that's what you get when you always copy systems outside. Even the legal and lawmaking are highly colonized. So what we did in 2019, the establishment of the Bangsamoro government, and had its all transformation of its ministries, its agencies. Many of the 7 codified laws, such as the Administrative Code, the Revenue Code, Taxation Code, the Civil Service Code of the Bangsamoro, the Educational Code of the Bangsamoro, in trying to counter a highly secularized, a highly capitalistic, a highly westernized and colonial government of the Philippines, they wanted to reflect their own traditions. They wanted to reflect their pre-colonial. Can you imagine? Many of the members of the parliament that were appointed in the Bangsamoro parliament wanted to go back pre-colonial times and even to look at the customary laws, because the Bangsamoro is composed of the majority are the Muslim ethnolinguistic communities. We also have the indigenous peoples, the IPs, indigenous peoples, and the community settlers, the Christian settlers who stayed there in that Bangsamoro jurisdiction. So it's a tripartite, tri-people representation that represents the entire parliament. So each of this code were trying to had a mind that they wanted to decolonize. We're now at the, that's what I'm trying to probably advocate, that we need to decolonize our mind. We need to decolonize knowledge making, knowledge creation. I always tell this to my Filipino colleagues, even in University of the Philippines, because when I read some theses of the people, of the students, 90% of those that they are referring, or references that they're citing are Western authors. I said, you wanted to address an issue, probably climate change or environmental or health issues in your society, in your own community, and yet 90% of your references are from the West. So how can you even reflect and have a more direct answer that is communal, that is reflective of the culture and traditions of that community? So in each of the lawmaking and legal procedures, in bill drafting, in enacting legislations and resolutions in the Bangsamoro Parliament, it is always publicly consulted with many of the stakeholders of the ethno-linguistic communities, with the indigenous peoples. Mind you, the indigenous peoples has its own traditions as well, and also with the community settlers, the Christians who stayed in the Bangsamoro. So it's quite through and through that are reflected of their traditions, customary laws, Agama Islam. The Islam that we have in the Southeast Asia is probably quite different to how in the Arab lands. We call it Nusantara Islam, similar with Indonesian and Malaysian Islam, although we're always being perceived as the periphery. And I don't want to get with that binary of core periphery issue, or even to take a look at of binaries, Occidentalism, Occidental studies, and Orientalist studies. So what's important for us is that many of the laws that were enacted and legislated by the members of the parliament were empirically evidenced based on the customary laws of this tri-people representation in the Bangsamoro Parliament. And that's how we counter a highly colonized society, national government, and as well as how the Filipino in the metropolitan communities study the Muslim minorities in the Philippines. So I would end here and looking forward to our interactive discussion in the open forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nassef. Once again, well on time, and also introducing another great aspect of sort of the colonial infrastructure.